Charleston has experienced Hermine, Julia, and just 72 hours ago, Hurricane Matthew. In this special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down once again with Channel 2 meteorologist Josh Marthers. It's been 72 hours since Hurricane Matthew actually made its presence known here in Charleston. I hate to be selfish, but tell me, what is it like to be meteorologist Josh Marthers right now?
Well, right now, Quintin, what we're trying to do is just kind of figure out, honestly, where we're going from here. We've still got a lot of folks dealing with storm surge damage down on the lower Charleston County coast, still lots of power outages, wind damage issues. But if you look at it overall, also inland flooding stuff too going on. Still some road closures, some road failures in spots. Right now, my job is essentially just to say, hey, the weather's going to be nice for the next few days while we're cleaning this mess up. That's what it's like to be me right now.
Yeah. Speaking of which, let me turn to the headline. This was in the Sunday Post and Courier, actually. It says this: Hurricane Matthew roars, then unravels. Hurricane Matthew did what in your mind?
I think what it did is it kind of got the attention again of the southeastern United States. It's been a long time since we've had a storm this large actually impact our coast. And it impacted a very large part of the coast. Florida hasn't taken a big hit in a long time. And this went all the way up the east coast of Florida, the east coast of Georgia, and impacted the entire coast of South Carolina and most of eastern North Carolina. We haven't had a storm to do that in a long time. So I think now that it's kind of gotten everybody's attention once again and saying, hey, we do live in a vulnerable part of the country, and these are things that we have to pay attention to.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you just mentioned this a few seconds ago, but describe me to fall in one word, the PD region.
Well, right now the PD is in a lot of trouble because of flooding from rivers. All that water that fell in the eastern part of North Carolina is draining down through the PD basin right now. And so those rivers up there are going to be flooding for the next several days. So there's going to be, even though the sun's shining, we're still going to have problems very similar to what we had last October 2015 with the flooding we saw then.
Yes, indeed. Speaking of which, McClellanville.
McClellanville is one of those that gained a noteworthy name back in 1989 from Hurricane Hugo, where the eye actually came on shore near Charleston Harbor, but the northern eye wall of the storm just completely devastated McClellanville. This go around, the eye came on shore in McClellanville, but it really didn't matter because, Matthew was such a large storm to begin with. And we talked about that for several days. It really did not matter if the storm made landfall or not. The impacts wouldn't change that much just because of the way the storm was shaped. They each have their own little personalities, and Matthew was one of those where no matter where the landfall point occurred, pretty much the impacts were going to be the same.
Edisto Beach.
Edisto Beach took the brunt of this so far based off of everything we see. Edisto and Hilton Head Island really got wrecked here in South Carolina from storm surge. 2 to 3 feet of sand on Palmetto Boulevard, some homes that were completely undermined. It's going to be a process down there for sure.
Speaking of which, Folly Beach.
Folly Beach, I still think Folly Beach still is going to have some problems with erosion. That's usually their issue. From what I can understand, they did have some inundation, but nothing like what Edisto Beach experienced based off of the reports I've seen.
Yeah, and I was there on Sunday, but let's talk about the battery.
Well, that was an interesting sight to see the waves topping the battery there and coming all the way over East Bay Street and going toward the homes. Lots of flooding down there, and it actually took it a little while for that to drain out. And I think one of the images that will last for a while was Brandon Baylor downtown at the Battery and watching the waves come over the top. That was definitely something I think got a lot of people's attention and said, hey, this is a real deal hurricane here coming into Charleston.
And really right next door, Colonial Lake.
And Colonial Lake overspilling its banks. We have reports of the residents down there in that area with water flooding their first floors, lots of damage to rooms, walls, kitchens, cabinets, all the above. So it's going to be a slow process still for that too. Even though we didn't have many injuries or things like that, the flooding is still a problem, very similar to what we had last year this time.
Let me turn to the forecast track. You all were tracking the hurricane, I believe, since September 25th.
It was a long-lived one, yeah.
And, when did you know that this particular storm was the one that we would not escape?
I think for sure early last week That was when we knew. But Thursday, Friday of the week before, it really got my attention because just of the general weather pattern that we've been in, and the tendency of the tracks so far this season have been to come near Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. So it did get your attention. Over the weekend, I was going, okay, this has really got my attention. And then by the first part of the week, it was like, okay, we're not going to miss this without getting some sort of an impact. How severe will the impact be? We still had some questions until the middle of the week, and then by then we pretty much knew what was coming.
The evacuation. Matthew was a great way really to implement the new, system on I-26.
Right.
Reversal that is.
Right.
Tell me, when you think back to that to right now, what is the biggest thing that sticks out to you?
How smoothly things went. I mean, I think that's the best thing about it. When you issue an evacuation order, the first thing that goes into your mind is people are going to be sitting for hours and hours and hours on the road trying to get out. They'll get out, but it's going to be a process. If I'm not mistaken, Wednesday afternoon, the average drive time from Charleston to Columbia was just over an hour and a half, something like an hour and 48 minutes or an hour and 38 minutes, something like that. Sometimes you can't do that on a good day. So I think that's what we can take away from this is the questions about would the contraflow work? Yes, it will work. And it did work.
Yes, indeed. Let me turn to hunkering down. It was difficult for people here in the city to really evacuate and take care of things and necessities related to this particular event. Personally, I didn't evacuate because I felt like, we would, get this storm to us. What was it like for you to see that happen?
Well, my main concern when an evacuation order is issued is, yes, chances are in a storm like this one, if you stay, you're probably going to be okay. But you have to remember, let's say your house catches on fire. Let's say you have a heart attack. Let's say some sort of medical emergency takes place. Our first responders can't get to you. And the image that you can use is what happened in Cherry Grove with the condominium complex catching on fire. Think about what would have happened had somebody who chose not to evacuate gotten stuck in one of those condominiums. Couldn't have been able to get to them. Right. Because we had such a difficult time, the first responders had such a difficult time getting there and containing the fire to begin with 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts. That's the thing that you got to think about is that, yeah, the storm itself, I may be able to fare pretty well in it, but what happens as a secondary impact of the storm, or let's just say your body says, okay, I'm having a heart attack, or I'm having a stroke, or something happens like that. Those are the things you have to think about. And in an evacuation zone, first responders may not be able to get to you. And that's why my advice always is, if you're in an area that is ordered under an evacuation, if you can get out, I recommend getting out.
The aftermath. As you know, people are now just cleaning up.
Right.
It's going to take a couple of while for that to happen.
Yep.
What would you say to people right now if they're listening to this?
We're going to be okay. We're going to be fine. We'll get through this just like we do everything.
Sure.
It's tough. Yes, the power's out still in many areas, and that's frustrating. I was fortunate enough to keep it. Okay. And I don't know how, but I didn't even come home to a blinking clock somehow, some way. But many people I know still don't have power. Right. Still don't have internet or Comcast or cable. They're getting that now, I think, right now, but as of yesterday, there were still some that didn't. And those are other things, again, a reason to evacuate. A lot of those comforts that we are used to in a zone like this will not be there. So, that's another reason to say, hey, let's get out of town and take a long weekend if we can. And things will be a little more comfortable. But, we're going to be okay. And it's going to be a process, and especially in the areas that were just hit really hard by the flooding, because that's a whole different thing. You can cut down a tree, you can split that up and clear that out of your yard in no time. But flooding is a completely different thing, because you have to worry about mold, you have to worry about the foundation of your home. All these things come into play, and that's going to be the process in those surge zones and in the areas that experience the inland flooding.
Yes, indeed. Let me me talk to you about the offbeats, and I hate to ask this, but what's next as far as hurricanes and this season?
Well, you know what? We're not done, I don't think, as far as named storms are concerned. You cannot let your guard down. I've been talking about this. I think I may have mentioned this in our last interview, that we have to remember in this current weather pattern, summer is still reigning king. Even though we've got a little shot of some cooler air coming in here, that's expected. It's fall. That's going to happen. But the general weather pattern is for warmth. And the tropics are still active. There's still a lot of warm water down in the Caribbean and in the Gulf and in the southwestern Atlantic. We're going to have to keep an eye on things, especially later in October. There are signs that the pattern may become a little more conducive for tropical development. Most likely that would be a Gulf or a Caribbean thing, but you never can count it out. So I would say to you, for the rest of the season, we've seen what the season has done so far. 5 named systems have impacted the area. Am I saying that's going to happen again? Maybe not. In fact, probably not. What are the odds? But we can't let our guard down at this point. But that's okay. Let us worry about it. You don't have to worry about it. We'll let you know when it's time for you to be concerned.
That's awesome. Well, as always, I appreciate your
Yeah, buddy.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you so much.
I
It's good to
appreciate
see you.
You too.